Welcome to Series 1 of the Lost in Language podcast, hosted by me, Jessica Ball. This series aims to shine a light on communication approaches that can improve how we communicate and relate to ourselves, each other, and the world around us. Each approach is helping us get to the meaning beyond the words. So instead of ignoring, dismissing, arguing, or cancelling each other, we can get curious, create empathy, and improve understanding. Also, whilst developing skills that can help us think together in creative and generative ways. In this episode, facilitator and master trainer of the LEGO Serious Play method, Robert Rasmussen. Robert is the main architect of the LEGO Serious Play method and has worked with LEGO Serious Play since its very beginning in 1999. Together with Per Kristiansen, he is the author of the book Building a Better Business with the LEGO Serious Play method, published in 2014. LEGO Serious Play is a technique and methodology that allows groups of people to think, communicate and problem solve or develop deep understanding. The inclusive nature of the process ensures everybody's voice is heard. By working with systematic creativity in the form of individual, shared or systems Lego models, people can safely explore different perspectives and meaning and unlock new knowledge. I hope you enjoy the episode. Welcome, Robert Rasmussen, to Lost in Language podcast. I'm really, really happy to have you here and to be talking about LEGO Serious Play with you today. So we had a little bit of a discussion, a pre-podcast discussion about how we would begin and when we need check-ins and when we don't. So I'd just like to invite you to kind of give some reflections of if we were doing LEGO Serious Play today, how might we begin?
We would begin by giving people a moment to reflect on something, maybe what they would have like to get out of the meeting, but giving them time to think and giving them time to put their thought into a little Lego model. And once they've had a couple of minutes to put their thought into a little Lego model, we would go around the table and have everybody share what is the meaning of their Lego model. So that is how we would begin, by giving everybody a chance to think before they have to start talking and then listening to everybody's voice.
Yeah, which I think is one thing that is going to really come up, I hope, in this conversation is the power of listening in the LEGO Serious Play process and how it can really support our listening in different ways. But I guess before we dive really deep into the process, maybe for some of the people that are listening that don't know what LEGO Serious Play is, would you be able to give a bit of an overview? And I know that you were involved from the very beginning, and there are quite a lot of LEGO Serious Play facilitators around the world now, but it's really great to have you here as someone that has been there for the journey in its entirety. So could you give everyone a bit of a history and an understanding of the process?
I will try. So LEGO Serious Play is a technique. It's a methodology. It's a technique. It's a way to help a group of people think, communicate, and problem solve, or build deeper understanding. This is a technique for people that somehow have to gather around the table, because whatever they are trying to do or want to do or need to do, they cannot do in isolation. So they need to have what we typically call a meeting. And what typically happens when you have a meeting about something is that 20% of the people use 80% of the talking time to talk about what they always talk about and which we already know they're going to talk about before the meeting even begins. We call this the 20-80 syndrome. And the problem with the 20-80 syndrome, meaning that 20% of the people use all the talking time, is that you don't benefit from everything the 80% knows. It's fine that 20% speak a lot, but the real resources are in the 80%, because those are the ones that have ideas, etc., etc. So LEGO Serious Play is a technique to, you can say, disrupt the 20-80 syndrome and create what we call a 100-100 meeting, where everybody have a chance to contribute with whatever they can contribute with. And when everybody's voice is heard, and when everybody feel that the meeting is done and say, yes, we are now good, people feel that they have had a chance to hear their voice and they know what is the voices from everybody else in the room. so they don't have any surprises. Because typically what happens with what we call the 2080 meeting is that the meetings typically end by saying, do we all agree? And people say, yes, we agree. But they don't. They're just tired. And they know that we could talk for another 2 hours and it wouldn't change the opinion of some people in the room. And the first thing you hear at the coffee machine after the meeting is, and I don't believe this is going to work. Because we didn't talk about this, I didn't have a chance to say this, etc., etc. So it is to break this syndrome, which is why we call it a technique that can help the individual think, and then can help this individual communicate their thinking, and then use this thinking and this communication to solve whatever issue or become more knowledgeable about whatever they're trying to do in this case here. And why does it work? Well, one of the reasons it really works is that people have a chance to think before they start talking, because we all know this in a meeting. When somebody raises the question, there's always somebody that immediately start talking. Yes, I think the answer to this way. And the moment that person says, yes, I think the meeting, 50% of the people stop listening. Because either they know, oh God, no, we're going to talk about this for the next 2 hours, right? Or they are thinking about what should they say in response to what the person said, right? And then the next person, yes, I kind of agree, but. And when that happens, 50% of the people that were listening stop listening, right? Because now they kind of feel this avalanche effect. Oh God, we're going to go down this alley and stuff like that. So break this entire syndrome, of which we call the 2080 syndrome. This is what research plays about.
Yeah, I love that. And I think there's that as well. But for me, of course, there's a lot of diversity and inclusion work going on in organizations. And there's a bit of a backlash about that at the moment, because it's beginning to be seen as a bit of a tick box exercise of, oh, we need this type of person and this type of person. And what I really love about the Lego Serious Play process is that it reframes inclusion and diversity, so that we're really looking at the method allows everyone to be included and gives everyone that agency, but that we really see and hear the diversity of thought in the room from everyone, and even from the very beginning. So again, for those people who aren't familiar with the methodology, of course, we do a skills build right at the beginning. So people get used to playing with the bricks and understanding how to work with metaphor and storytelling. But what I love from my experience with the method is that first tower, the first skills build of build a tower. It's so incredible how everyone builds a completely different tower, and some people are already putting like little bits of themselves in there, and some people are just trying to build the tallest one, and some, so from the very beginning we just see how diverse everyone is in the room, and that's so powerful, I think.
No, it's amazing, because even if you only give people 6 bricks, the towers will still all be different.
Yeah.
And it is amazing. It is amazing. And of course, like the whole point of Lego Serious Play, how can you take advantage of diversity?
Yeah.
And my own experience is, when we go back in the development and stuff like it, is what I call my Shannon moment. Because when I developed this technique here, I did not have the idea. I was asked to look at this idea and then turn it into a method. And I did this on my spare time. I had a product development team. And then I finally had the prototype and told my team of 6 people, you're going to be my guinea pigs. We're going to try this here. And we did this workshop, and the best answers came from my 28-year-old administrative assistant, Shannon. And I asked her afterwards, Shannon, why have you never said all of these things before? Well, Robert, I'm not normally expected to speak. And I didn't believe I had anything to contribute, but you made me speak. I had to speak because that was the method. I was scared to death, right? And this became a turning point in her professional life, really. And this is really, really, really powerful.
Yeah, to really realize the value that is sitting within people that don't feel enabled or allowed to speak.
Yeah.
And whether that's their own internal voice telling them that they have nothing of value or the environment that they find themselves in. But yeah, I think it's so powerful for everyone to be able to, like you said, first think individually for themselves and then explore through the model making and then share and be heard by the group. But I guess there is that one really important bit of the process because there are other ways, of course, to facilitate spaces where people can be heard and people can reflect. But the wonderful thing about Lego Serious Play is we get to play with these bricks. You know, lots of us grew up playing with Lego. But of course, going back to the inclusion thing, you can have an amazingly generative and rich Lego Serious Play workshop with people who have never touched Lego. And I did that for the first time last year with a group of conservationists from Uganda. And we were building a systems build model around a vision of area-based conservation in Uganda. And most of them had never even seen Lego. And by the end of the third day, or even by the end of the first day, it was incredible, like what they were building and the stories that they were telling and the way that they could talk through the system. And yeah, so I think again, you know, that it is fully inclusive to anyone, even if they haven't grown up with Lego. And also the other kind of thing is it can transcend like language issues as well. Like I've done workshops with women who don't speak great English, like it was part of a kind of community project where we wanted to get their input into building that they would be invited to use for kind of a community project. And again, they could tell their stories and what they wanted through Lego with very little need for English as a common language. So this kind of the bricks become this common language that people can use.
Well, it really, really it's deeply interesting to me. Why does it work so well? Because when I put the method together, my background is teaching, and I had worked at that time in Lego education. So I'm sort of my expertise was how can you make stuff from building stuff out of Lego? Why does it work so well? Because yes, there's a bunch of science behind it. Yes, there's a bunch of this, there's a bunch of this, which kind of put it together. But there's really something, why is it that it works so well? And what is really the secret sauce? It's interesting what you say about people not Lego experience, because too much Lego experience is actually not good. Because if you have too much Lego experience, you kind of get lost in, not in language, but you get lost in what the bricks can do. So you build some really intricate models and you look for this specific piece which you know exists, right? And the meaning get lost. Whereas sometimes when people have less Lego experience, they build more metaphorically, they build more conceptual, they build more to the point. So it's easier to communicate.
I think it's because, you know, first of all, as humans, we had an oral language culture, a storytelling culture before we had written language. And I think there is something of that within us still, that we know that the power of storytelling to convey information and messages and knowledge, like we all have experienced that at some point in our ancestry. So I think that's another powerful reason why it can cross different cultures and different kind of skills.
But yeah, no, it is. And people say, well, you could use marshmallows, you could use Play-Doh, you could use, you know, all of these kind of things and stuff. Yes, you could. But many years ago, Lego started talking about what they call systematic creativity. And it really didn't resonate with me, systematic creativity, because how can there be systems in creativity? But I kind of sort of finally got it, that it's because there's system that you have infinite possibilities. If it was Play-Doh, yes, you could make it more sort of completely own, but it would take forever.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be very happy with the result. Whereas because there's some system and because you can take the bricks apart, oh, I don't like this, I like it this here, quickly do it. It's this system that makes it really, really open-ended. At the same time, it makes it safe. because, you know, my model is just as good as everybody else's. I've listened to many people, and when they've taken me through their thoughts during the tower building exercise, and it's amazing what goes through people's heads in the tower. Because for us, oh, it's just a tower. Right? No, it's not just a tower. Right?
Yeah.
And the moment they look up and see the other towers and say, they're all different, right? But I also got it right. It's amazing. Amazing. So it is this sort of systematic creativity thing. And the fact that if you don't like it, take it apart again.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love that because I think it speaks to this kind of constant dance between polarities of order and chaos, for instance. Like chaos is where the creativity can emerge, but to hold it within a space of structure and order allows, like you said, the process to have some safety and some, the support that we need to arrive at something valuable in a period of time. Because the creative process could go on and on and on, but we still have objectives and we still have the focal points that we need, and that's where the process really supports that. And so obviously once we've done, just to sort of talk a bit more about the process and the structure, once we've done the skills build and people are familiar with using the bricks and metaphor and storytelling, then you would pose a question, right? So you would agree in advance with the people leading the session, what is it that we're here to think about together, and then a series of questions that people would build models in response to. So could you talk a little bit about then, I think, the importance of a really good question?
Well, the technique is really a technique without content. It is a structure. And then when you put content into this, you get a workshop, which also means that in a way, all workshops are customized. Every workshop is designed to uniquely meet whatever goal. Why are we sitting around this table here? Well, we are sitting around this table here because when we finish this workshop, we will have a better understanding of how can we be more competitive in our company, or we will have come up with 3 ways to deal with chaos when something happens in our environment, right? Whatever it is, right? It's always this sort of sense, an output we want to have there. The process is always question posed by the facilitator, build your answer to the question using the bricks, metaphors and stuff like that, share what you have built, and then we learn from that. This is always the operating system, which obviously means that the questions are key because it's a little bit, a good question is a little bit like a treasure hunt. That when you go on a treasure hunt, you want people to find something when they find the treasure. And when they find this treasure, it will give them the lead to the next journey. The same thing is a little bit like a question. You want people to think about certain things, but you don't want to tell them, what is the answer. But you want to pose an answer and then have them think about that. And then out of that thinking, their answer will come. And in a way, you kind of have a sense, well, they need to answer something about this, right? So how do I know pose a question that will help them think about that? So let's say you wanted people to reflect upon what is good customer service. Let's say we have a workshop for people, a group of people, and when we want to come out of this workshop here, we want to have 4 ideas for how we can make our customer service experience better. That could be a workshop, right? And that's where we want to come out. And we'll do our skills building. We will get used to the process, right? And I could ask you, so what is people will say, well, so let's build good customer service. And this is a terrible question, right? Because it's too open-ended. What do you mean for whom, for when, and stuff like that? But if I instead began with something like this here and say, okay, think of your own life as a customer in the world. Think of your experiences with customer service in your world. Think of one of the good experiences you have had in your life. Now build what made that a good experience. That would be a good question, because that would frame people. I know where I am to think, but the answer in that framing is open-ended. Mm. And at the same time, I can pick the answer from myself, because a Lego Serious Play workshop comes from the inside out. Mm. Ask questions so people will unlock some of the knowledge they have in their conscious and subconscious mind. It's not a way to convey my knowledge to you. But let's imagine we did this here. Now we would somehow have a sense of what that is. Then we could move on and say, well, think of what we are currently doing. Are we providing any of these experiences? No, we are not, right? Why are we not providing these experiences? Maybe we should think about how we could provide these experiences, et cetera, et cetera. So this sense of a good question is, the frame is clear, but then it's open-ended, and you can pick the knowledge from yourself.
Yeah, I love that. I think that, again, it speaks to the inclusion and the agency of people not realizing that they can draw on their own experience in a way that can then be shared with the group for this kind of insight. And I guess that's what we're really looking for, I think, in Lego Serious Play. Like you say, talk about new knowledge and insight. So the method is not, like in some meetings, people show up and they say the same thing they always say. And that, I mean, it's so painful to be in those meetings. And then at the end, the leader will be like, well, I didn't hear anything that I didn't already know. And so I think, yeah, what is it that, and I want you to talk a little bit about what you call hand knowledge, because what is it about Lego Serious Play that really allows people to start generating these insights and this new knowledge? So get moving away from the same habitual thought patterns and saying the same thing over and over again.
It comes back to the questions, because the questions have to be hard, meaning that if people immediately know the answer to the question you ask as a facilitator, the question is not hard enough. People need to have this sense, yeah, I know the answer to this, but I have no clue really where to begin to the answer. So this sense that, yes, somehow I know this, but I don't really know what it is. And then in the building, and this is where the science comes in, that when you build here, it helps you build up here. In the building, they built themselves to this answer. And that's why you often hear this, Robert, I had no idea that I knew this, but I guess I did it right. And that's why one of the prompts I always have when I pose a question, don't have a meeting with yourself about what to build. Because if you have a meeting with yourself about what, you can only have a meeting without that part of your knowledge that is already sort of conscious. And that's useless, right? I mean, we need to unlock new knowledge, we unlock more knowledge, need to unlock, of course, not new knowledge, but more knowledge, because in a way it's not new, it's already there. So it's this sense of unlocking something that you know, but you don't really know you know it. You know it, but you don't know what it is that you know.
Yeah. And one thing that I remember from your training that I did with you, and that, was some years ago now, I think, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Is that 70 to 80% of our brain cells are connected to our hands. And that just stuck with me so much as someone, that has a creative background, that loves doing things with their hands, is that by making, we are accessing, new, different types of knowledge within ourselves. Through the process of making. And I also remember you saying, like, if you can't think of anything to build, just build a cool model. Because once you start building, something happens. It's that something that, and that's what creativity is, right? It's like the sort of creation of something new that you didn't know you didn't have an idea of what was you were going to build. And I guess it goes back to your point about sometimes if you're a really good Lego maker, then maybe it's not not an advantage, because actually we don't know what we're going to build a lot of the time. It unfolds as we're playing with the bricks, as we're thinking about the question, as we're like letting our hands do some magic, and these kind of stories that unfold.
Yeah, and it is magic. I mean, it's a really, really magic thing, because there's this feeling that you're trying to arrange a meeting between a thought and a way to express this thought.
Mm.
And yeah, I have this thought here, and you go and look for bricks, right? And whether the brick trigger the thought or the thought trigger the brick is really doesn't matter. But somehow they find out doing something together so that you express something which you actually couldn't express before. And this is where then that's why we've got it help you think, and then it help you communicate about your think, and then we use this to solve whatever we want to solve in this case here. But it is a really, really strange thing. And there is something about this trust your hands, because they do know more than. And of course, we also know from daily life that our hands do a lot of stuff without having to think about it.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
why shouldn't they also be able to do some thinking for us?
Yeah, I always think that with like typing. So, I can touch type, but if you ask me to tell you where the letters were on the keyboard, I couldn't tell you, but my fingers know. And I
Totally.
always think that's just incredible. Like how do my fingers know that, but my brain has
Yeah.
no clue. So
Yeah.
yeah, there is something really magical.
There is some.
Um, And also, I think it's important to say that like models don't have to be literal, right? That we can give meaning. And I think this is the other beautiful bit about the knowledge and the communication, is the meaning aspect of it. So whatever bricks we choose to use, we can assign meaning to those bricks in whichever way feels right for us, and then the group accepts that. So I
Yeah,
think
of
that's really
course.
powerful as
Yeah.
well. And I really love, yeah, in your kind of etiquette guide, that it's not just about listening to the story, but accepting the
Yeah.
story. And that's really powerful, because very often we can dismiss what we hear. But when we have a model to look at as well,
Mm-hmm.
then it gives us kind of more reason and focus to kind of really listen and accept what that person is saying,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand the meaning that they're giving to each element of their model in the storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any examples of kind of, yeah, like how what transformation has happened in that kind of meaning making storytelling in the build process and the listening back process?
So I think my biggest moment or insights comes from asking people something to their model where I don't think it has a meaning, because then, well, maybe it's obvious, right? And then it does have a meaning, uh, and or the person will say, well, I originally didn't think of it, but it probably means this, right? So I think my biggest sort of insight is don't take for granted that it means what you think it means in your view.
Mm,
So many sort of I don't really have a good model here, but often I've said, it probably does means this, or it probably means this, right? And then when I ask it, it means something completely different. I think this is my biggest sort of be really, really careful of putting your interpretation
mm,
of the meaning onto people's models,
yeah.
because you're normally never right.
Yeah, and then it just highlights the kind of assumptions and biases that we're all naturally carrying around, because we naturally make our own meaning. And it's hard not to kind of impose or project that meaning onto other people or other things around us. Lego Serious Play really allows us to see very clearly through the storytelling of the models that we have these kind of sometimes subtle, sometimes very stark contrasts in our meaning we give to things.
Mhm.
And you said something before we actually started recording about Lego Serious Play allowing us to make the intangible tangible. And I think that's really important, in that this model making, which obviously is another, often overlooked form of learning and communication, that visual and kinesthetic, not just auditory, but that we're playing with our hands and we're being able to see a model as well as hear the story. So again, sort of speaks to the full inclusion of different ways of learning and communicating.
Whatever you are, whether you're visual, whether you're auditive, or whether you're spatial, or whether kinesthetic and stuff like that, which is why also that it's incredibly effective.
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes, when people says, why should I use Lego Serious Play for this meeting, Robert? Well, if you want to achieve much more in shorter time and have fun at the same time, you should do it. But if time is not an issue for you, don't use this here because you cannot deal with the efficiency. And this is hard because in a way people have this sense, God, man, you mean we're going to listen to everybody? and we're going to have to build with Lego. So people have this, and this must take forever, right? But in reality, and you know that, right, that this is much more efficient than anything else. Because you're on all the time and you use all your senses and
the depth and the richness that you can get to in a shorter space of time, actually. And I think one interesting thing, because some of the other kind of communication practitioners I'm speaking with talk a lot about conflict, and being able to reframe conflict as something that's generative, something that we can use as an opportunity of learning and growth and move through. But I think the interesting thing about Lego Serious Play is that conflict doesn't really come into it because of the way that the process works. But can you sort of share a little bit of your own experience of has
yeah.
conflict ever arisen, or does the method allow a different way to kind of share and a different way to create safety? Because I think that model and talking about the model really does create an element of safety. But
Yeah, no,
what's your
totally.
experience?
I think it's by, in certain social pedagogic context in Scandinavia, it's called communicating through a common third.
Mm.
The real jewel is really the model because you communicate through this one here. So it's not subject communicating to subject. It's not me agreeing with you or disagreeing with you. Here's how I see it. How do you see it? I see it this way. You see it this way. So the fact that we communicate through this one here versus, this is why conflict doesn't arise. Because I don't have to agree with you. You see it this way here? Yes, Robert, I see it this way here. Well, I kind of don't see it like this. Well, how do you see it? Well, I kind of see it a little bit like this here, Robert, instead. Oh, okay, you got a point, right? No, maybe there's a point there. But so maybe it is more like this here when you sort of have this. And so this is really takes all conflicts away. And this is also where you don't have to agree with, but you have to respect that this is how I see it. Yeah, I don't agree. That's fine. But I can live with the fact that you see it like this here.
Yeah.
That is the power. It's about the model. It's about the model. It's about the model. And whenever workshop doesn't go good, it's because you run away from it goes away from the model. You start talking about, well, Robert, what do you think is in your background that makes you believe this here? Well, we don't really care about that. We're not doing psychotherapy, right? We're just talking about it.
Yeah, and I have had that in some workshops, and I think it sometimes can be the leader that will deviate from talking about their model, and they'll have their model, and then they'll sit back, and then they'll go into their like spiel. But what's great about the method is that you can just say, if it's not in the model, you can't talk about it, and that is the agreement that we've all taken here,
Yeah.
and so you can move them on, or you can bring their focus back. And that's really powerful, I think, that it does keep people focused on the question in a, like you said, in a really efficient way. And then they learn from that because they're like, right, well, if there's something I really, really want to talk about because it's really, really important, then next time round, I'm building it in my model.
Totally.
So I
Totally. I mean,
think,
like I said, well, can you show me what you're now talking about? Can you show me where that is in the model? Well, it's not in the model. Okay, thank you, Nick. Let's go to the next one. Then remember to include it when you get a chance. It
yeah.
makes it.
But so I see that the individual build allows us to kind of well, not take out the conflict, but like you said, just we have to accept that other people see things differently. When you invite the group then to perhaps build a shared model, what is the process for doing that in again like a generative, efficient, and mutual understanding way?
Now you're trained before we sort of came up with what we call the red brick concept.
Oh no, we did do the red brick
We did the
concept.
red brick, and I
Yeah.
think we did do the red brick. I think, and the red brick concept is this sense that it comes in the framing. You know, let's say we need to leave the room with one answer in terms of what is our value proposition or what is our something and stuff like that. So we need to somehow negotiate our individual answers into one model. One of the secret sources in Lego Serious Play is that it always begins with the individual. It always begins with the individual.
Mm.
It always begins with listening and hearing the individual. So once people have felt that they have really sort of been listened to, they have a different mindset. So this sense that we're now going to negotiate our individual models to one, which we'll all commit to. Your red brick means you can have a non-negotiable in this group model or shared model, meaning that this is what we call your red brick. And that means that you have a hard time imagining that you will be happy with the group model unless it includes this concept from you. This is a really, really powerful thing that isn't, yes, I have a non-negotiable. And of course, the rest of the group also has a non-negotiable. So that's why if you stick to this and always stick to this, you don't have to agree with everything, but you have to accept that somebody else sees it different. I have started, and I can more vocal about it. Don't use the word agree. It because it's the worst thing you can do. People don't agree on anything in this world here, but people can live with a lot of stuff. People can respect a lot of things, right? So do you agree that the precision of this one here is here? No, I don't. I think it's there, right? Oh, I see your point, right? Can you live with it here? Of course I can. I'm fine with this. I can respect this, but I don't agree on it. So this dialogue and framing it is for me is key. Then
And that's the power of understanding, isn't it? Because like you said, and the power of inclusivity, because when we feel that we've really been included and we've had agency and we've been listened to and heard, then when the outcome isn't that something that we 100% agree with, because we have all that understanding of why we've come to that conclusion and why we think that is the best possible outcome for the group, we can live with it.
Yeah, and we can be loyal to it.
Yeah, that's a really
It's what
important
matters.
word.
We will be loyal to this decision. I will be loyal. Don't have to be, but you gotta be loyal to it or committed. But I'll be loyal to this one here. I will act in accordance with what we have decided here, because I feel I'm part of it, and I can also respect the rest of it. So I'll be loyal to it. That's what.
Yeah, that's really amazing. So we've kind of covered individual build, we've covered a bit of shared build, and then obviously the third build, which takes more time and is more complex and maybe doesn't always have that definite outcome because we're moving into the realm of systems, is like the systems model build. And I just love looking at systems through Lego because I think, again, like having the visual representation that you then can play with is so much more powerful than trying to just think about it or write about it or even just draw a diagram. So can you talk a little bit about, how and why you developed the systems model element of the process and how a little bit about how it works and then really like the potential for groups and organizations when working with systems builds.
The origin of Lego Serious Play was the basic idea was how can you act strategic on the fly. So when you have a business, and there are many things going on, and surprises happen, opportunities arise, right? And you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. How can you then have so much systems insight that you on the fly will make good decisions in real business? So in a way, if you have there's an earthquake, then you actually know how to react and what decisions to make and stuff like that. So how can you prepare your own mindset for making good decisions? That was why we built the system. And this is actually why it's called serious play. So how can you play with your big business system in a safe way? And when you play with it and you can play out, well, let's play that there's a new competitor coming up. Let's play that our sales goes through the roof, right? Let's play that our CEO gets promoted to something else, right? Let's play, all of these in a system, right? So how could you play and see how does the system react to changes in a safe environment, so that when real changes happen to your system, you have a much deeper understanding of how to react. This is the thinking behind it. This is why it's called serious play. Originally, Lego Serious Play was called Executive Discovery because it was aimed at CEO level only. And how could you give CEOs on the top level in the business, make them better in making strategic decisions on the fly? Well, we can prepare them by building the system their business lives in and play out scenarios in different ways, and then see how do we react to changes? Why do we do these decisions? Why do we not do this? And then try to learn this super why. This is a good decision for us to do because this is a bad decision for us to do because, and then gather some of those insights and use them as express decision makers when real life happens.
And so you work a lot with business and corporate business, but my work is more with environmental groups and community groups. And so the system, I mean, like you said, the answer is in the system, and you might be talking about an organizational system, but that still interacts with a wider system. And the same way that the systems maybe, I've done workshops around knife crime, I've done workshops around conservation, and bringing those diverse kind of actors together and across ages, across cultures, across types of work. It's really powerful when we're looking at the system, because we all have a very different relationship to that system, but also a common relationship. So we can uncover that. So again, I guess, like you said, it always starts with the I, with the individual. So in the systems build, it starts with the individual by allowing people to build agents or actors we put in the system. And I think that's really powerful because it uncovers just how many different agents or actors are present in that system, and how close or far away we are as individuals to them, and then of course how the relationships that are occurring between that and model in the center of the system. Can you say a little bit about how you come to sort of build the central model that the system works with in the systems build?
How we came to do that?
Well, like if we were having a workshop, it might be like your vision of kind of a safe community, and then you build the sort of agents of that system and the relationships for people that perhaps would never have seen a Lego systems model. It's quite hard to explain, isn't it? Because it's sort of three things, isn't it? It's first the central model, then it's the different agents, and then it's the relationships between them before you start playing with the different scenarios. But I think the relationship bit is also really important, the way that you have strong bonds and weak or like loose bonds of the relationships, because it allows you then to show the sort of the power dynamics or the sphere of influence or control between what you are in the system and other elements of it.
I think the core of it is really, of course, you're trying to achieve some aspiration. You're trying to maybe to achieve a safe community, or you are trying to achieve a more sustainable agriculture, or whatever you have this aspiration, which is you're trying to achieve. This becomes, you can say, your center model. It is about achieving a safe community. That is our goal. That is our aspiration. That is our vision, whatever. Right? Now, then we look at but this doesn't happen in isolation, right? That this happens in a system, right? So what are the factors that can have an impact on whether you get closer to your safe community or you get further away from your this is the thinking, so that, which is what we call agents, right? There can be many factors that can push your aspiration forward or can hold it back. And these agents are connected. They don't, nothing is in isolation, right? So if we saw, maybe during COVID, right, that some safe communities that were not so safe any longer, things that could happen. Some things can impact the safety. So this is why you have to look at when you look at what are we trying to achieve, what is our goal, what is our aspiration, it doesn't happen in isolation. It's impacted by a system. And let's build this system and let's see at how it's connected, and let's play with the system and see which of these events seems to have a positive impact. Maybe it pushes our aspiration forward. Which of these events had a negative, it pulled us backwards. That's to have this bigger thinking. That's and that's why we actually originally was this thinking, well, we need to look at the system first, and then we can see what will the system allow us to do. So let's imagine a safe community. Let's build the system. And that's when we know the system, let's build what is for us the identity of a safe community. We actually literally put a black box in the middle of the table, and then we built the system around the black box. Because the thinking was, once we know the system, we can define the black box. It didn't work. You somehow, because people have ideas in there, safe community, people have beliefs, people have values, people have passions about what should the safe community. Once we have defined that, okay, now let's look at the world in which we exist and look at which part of the world can impact us positive, which can impact us negative, and see how can we learn from that.
I love that. So it's interesting. So you're saying that you started originally thinking to build the systems model first, but you flipped it because, like you said, it starts from the inside out and from the individual. And that's so important, isn't it? That if we don't start with ourselves as individuals, what do we know? What have we experienced? What are our values? What is our worldview? We cannot get to that systems change. And yeah, that for me is really, really powerful.
Otherwise, it just becomes some external stakeholders' definition of what is safe community, which people don't buy into. So unless people feel, I have my red brick also in there, right? I have my passion, I have my belief. This one I will commit to.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. And this was the lesson learned. No, it didn't work with the black box.
And I think this is a good point to bring in the role of emotions, because you sort of talked a little bit about this, and in your latest newsletter, and you said when we're making with our hands, this kind of emotional reaction happens. And so do you think that is why, we have to spark that emotional felt connection in the beginning to make everything else work in a way, to have that mutual understanding, to create that agency, to create that buy-in, and that loyalty that you were talking about, that understanding. So what does it mean for you to bring in emotions to this process when you're working with groups?
Um, it's, I mean, there's so many answers we don't have answers, but I think a couple of lessons learned is that whatever a question as a facilitator has to be meaningful for the people. And meaningful people have to be able to find the answer to your question from themselves, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. The second thing there's you probably maybe you remember I had this quote from Simon Papert from many years ago. What is it? What you learn in the process of making something that is truly yours tend to sink much deeper into the subsoil of your mind than what anyone can tell you.
Mm.
And the third thing is, it seems really difficult for people to lie when they build.
Mm.
There's something that it's much easier to lie when you just talk or say things that you don't really believe in or you don't really feel committed. But somehow people have a much harder time lying or being not honest when they build, because when you talk, things are gone. When you build, it's still there.
Mm.
What you said and what you is still here, right? You are still accountable, right? Whereas when you said something, it's easy to say, and oh yeah, no, life will end, and you misunderstood me, you didn't listen, stuff like that. But
Mm.
so it's these mixed stuff, right? And then of course there's this thing about nothing goes into your long-term memory unless it's connected to an emotion and stuff like that.
Mm.
That's a science part of it as well.
Yeah. And I think also like it's so interesting that you say people can't lie when they're building a model, but it's because you also have to look at it, right? And then you have this relationship to really what is your own truth.
Yeah.
And being able to show that truth to other people and being accountable to it and allowing through the making process to perhaps some of that unconscious come out that you weren't quite ready or able to look at,
Yeah.
and just through your thought process or your spoken process. So I think one thing that is so central to this process that perhaps, it doesn't come in as much with other facilitated processes is the role of creativity, like real creativity. And what does creativity like mean for you in terms of the potential to like affect change or transformation, either individually or collectively?
I sometimes struggle with creativity. I find the term imagination
Mm.
more useful, and because and instead of imagine, imagine that we have achieved this, imagine that we have become this here, imagine, and working then from that image. Oh yeah, I can imagine that we would have a safe community and stuff like that. And versus, well, let's build a safe community and let's be creative and build a safe community. I
Mm.
think it's much harder because at the end of the day, creativity is more about making stuff. Comes from the word create, and I still
Mm.
sort of, yeah, I struggle with the word creativity.
Yeah, but I also love that I mean it's interesting because imagination is a new buzzword, I think, and but obviously it's been present in your practice for many years, but now I think we hear about imagination activists and moral imagination and collective imagination. So it's interesting that other people have caught up with this idea of the power of imagining,
Yeah,
yes, versus the sort of potential of creativity. It's true. I think it's important to make that distinction because that's what we do as children, is that we learn and we understand and we relate through imagining and play. Um, and it is, it's not necessarily about creating something that we want to present to the world. It's about imagining and understanding and learning, which is quite different. You're right.
it is because creativity is more in many ways, the making of something that can help fulfill your imagination.
Mm, Yeah.
But the creativity needs to somehow have a target or a goal or a purpose and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And and that's, on a really simple level. Sometimes I tell facilitators, don't oversort the bricks, because sometimes the facilitators that they have obsessive compulsive disorder syndrome. Right? They have all the blue bricks here, all the yellow bricks here, all the red bricks here, all the stuff like that. And then when you have to go and build, it becomes much more difficult to be creative.
Mm.
In a way, you need to have a meeting with yourself about what you want to build, and then you go and shop for the red one, the blue one, or the gray one. Whereas if you just have a huge bunch of bricks on the table, it in a way becomes easier to be creative.
Yeah.
In, and make stuff.
Yeah. And I guess yeah, it's interesting. We're always playing with kind of the boundaries again of creativity and order. I
Yeah.
would never arrange the bricks by color. That would take for hours. And yeah, it's true. It's like then someone else has imposed too much order,
Yeah.
on the experience. Whereas just a pile of bricks, yeah, it's just enough order because you're like, okay, bricks, the
And
order.
at the same time, we also know that if we just had a big pile of bricks, when instead of giving people the individual sets, when you begin the skills building, it wouldn't work, right? This is the
Yeah.
secret. Everybody has their own set of bricks. I'm on equal foot with everybody. I must participate. I must join, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the
So it's
secret.
kind of, yeah, the sort of step by step
Yeah.
process of building people up to work together in a really generative way. Um, I think maybe one of the final questions I'd like to ask you is is about the role of leadership in your experience with Lego Serious Play, because you talked about how it was originally developed for C-suite kind of CEOs, but now we've seen that it can be used across every type of person at every level, every age. Um, but what I think is really important is this distinction between being listened to and being heard, and this accepting of the model, because there are obviously, we know that some people are struggling in the workplace with kind of unhealthy work environments, unhealthy cultures, not feeling listened to, not feeling seen. And have you ever come up across any resistance of bringing in this process to the workplace because because it's so powerful in allowing people to be really heard? But I always find as the facilitator, like our role, whatever method we choose to use, is always with the intention of hearing every voice, of unlocking the value of each person. But at the end of the day, when we leave, it's up to the leader to respond to what they've heard. And have you ever encountered any situations where there's just been resistance to really accepting the stories of the model, and really not wanting to act on those stories?
I think in most cases, whoever has the power to take action on what comes out of the workshop should also be in the workshop.
Mm.
Otherwise, it can be. I mean, there are also situations where some leaders are so much bought into the process because they know it, that they will still act on it in terms, despite the fact that they have not been it. But in and the worst thing that can happen is if you have a workshop and people will say, "Yeah, this is all very good, but this person should have been in the room." That's never a good situation. So that if that is the case, then you as a facilitator must somehow frame it. Say, yes, we're doing this here. There's no guarantee that somebody will act on it, or we're going to use in this work. So we're going to focus on what is in our power to do stuff and things like that. I sometimes get this question: is there any sort of pattern in terms of which industries and which businesses and which organizations, whether they are public, private, individuals, or whatever it is. No, it more comes back to whatever the leadership idea is of, and we can talk project leader, we can talk team leader, we can talk community leader, we can talk all kinds of level, right? In terms of their mindset, because you have to have this mindset that hearing, the more you can hear all voices, the better you will be in a position to lead. The second thing is that you also have to have this belief that being a leader in many ways is facilitating what your team can do, not use, steering the ship, because and it's changing, but there are still leadership mantras that believe I am the captain on the ship, right? I am the one that has the vision in terms of where we're going. I will tell you where we are going, right? And if am not able to tell you where you should be going, if I feel I need to ask you, what do you think? It would be seen as a sign of weakness of my leadership. That's not good. That's not good. Yeah. My favorite book is this, The Humble Inquiry, the gentle art of asking instead of telling people. This is, he has this example of a surgery team where the lead surgeon is from the English upper class, right? And the anesthesiology is from Japan, right? And the nurse is from the working class in UK. Unless something comes from the lead surgeon, the patient can die. Unless you feel that, as whoever has something to say to the well-being of this patient on the surgery table can say things, right, without threatening the position of the lead surgeon, then the patient will die.
Yeah.
So what they have in common, I think, many of the people that do use Lego is this sense of they want to break the habitual way of doing things. So break the habitual way of thinking, breaking the habitual way of collaborating, breaking the habitual way of thinking about safe communities, breaking the habitual way of achieving sustainability, breaking the habitual ways of this. They often have that in common, and then say, well, I cannot expect my team, my co-workers to break the habitual way of thinking and doing unless I also break my habitual ways of how we try to achieve results. And that's why I want to use Lego Serious Play, because I want to show I'm ready to break our habitual ways of achieving, collaboration, stuff like that.
Yeah. And I think it's so important. I always think about the Einstein quote of we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking we use to create them. But I think very often change can be framed in such a way that it makes us feel that we're doing something wrong or there's something wrong with us. But when I think we come together in a process like Lego Serious Play and all the things that we've talked about, the wonderful diversity of thought and the mutual understanding, and everyone's model is right because it's their truth and we have to accept that story, it allows us to just change naturally and to uncover those insights and to see this new thinking that's possible, but like we've talked about, in this really safe, playful, yet serious, deep way. And I think that is why it's so powerful. And I know it can be hard to bring in these processes because, you might say, well, if you want to do a systems model build, that is like 3 days, and people think that's a long time. But again, trying to show them that the efficiency of doing that because of what they'll achieve in that amount of time versus what they'd achieve or not even achieve if they didn't do it or they did something differently. So it's really, I think, trusting that process and being open, like you said, and acknowledging that we do need to change our habitual ways of thinking and doing things because they're not working, and that there's this other potential lying in all of us as a collective.
And yes, it's not inclusion just because we are diverse, right? It's you need to take advantage of the fact that people are diverse. And how can you harvest this diversity to the benefit of whatever you're trying to achieve, right? This is why we should be it, right? Because there's so much harvesting to be done.
Yeah.
Not just to make people feel good, that they also feel included, right? That's nice, but
yeah, it's actually understanding that, yeah, like you said, that there's real value to be harvested from each person if they're enabled to share their insights in
yeah,
a
and the
generative,
more
creative
towers
way.
we have, the better it is, right? It's
Yeah, yeah,
the more you
definitely.
build different from the rest of the group, the better it is.
Yeah, reframing difference is something really positive when we can see it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So as we draw to a close then, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think is really important for people to know about Lego Serious Play, or any other insights you'd like to share?
Um, I mean, we could talk for hours, right? I
Yeah.
think one of the that I do want to share, that I've been, working with Lego Serious Play for so many, many, many years, right? That I had never imagined that Lego Serious Play would be relevant today. I think that many, many, many years ago we thought it would be over and done and stuff like that. So I think the big surprise for me also after COVID is that it seems to be more and more relevant the more and more digital we become.
Mm,
And that was not the anticipation.
yeah.
And so this way of having something simple analog becomes even more important.
And do you have your own views on why it's so important and relevant today?
I think it's because we haven't changed. We're still the same as we were 200,000 years ago.
Mm,
And the hands is what has brought us where we are and stuff like that. So I think that in many ways this is old Stone Age way of communicating and metaphors and stories like you were telling about, right? And this is still who we were, 200,000 years ago. This is still who we are today. So the same ways that worked then is also what works for us now, and many of those things is not possible in the digital world.
mm, yeah. And that the digital world is just moving at such a pace that the natural way of being human can't quite keep up with. And then we just have this dissonance
Yeah.
in what it means to be really human, but yet how we're choosing to live our lives.
And this idea of being able to express the intangible
Mm, yeah,
or make
definitely.
tangible stuff like that is just huge.
So you've been making a little model as we've been talking. Is there any meaning in it that you'd like to
No,
leave with?
no, no.
No?
It's I typically always do it. It somehow has something to do with the hands, that when you occupy your hands, it's easier to concentrate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
But
Okay, well, I think we can maybe draw it to a close. Uh, I'd like to thank you very much for this conversation. It's been playful and interesting and inspiring, and there's, yeah, so much I think to think about and reflect on, and maybe go away and build some Lego models on.
please do.
But yeah, I really can speak from my own experience of the power of the method. So thank you so much for being part of bringing it into the world and continuing to share it with other people.
A pleasure to talk again. Yep. Good.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Lost in Language podcast. If you would like further information on the guests and topics explored in this series, please visit creatingmeaning.club. Thanks for listening with us in our search to get to the meaning beyond the words.